the rest.
I don't want to promise that other people are going to be there, but I'm going to be there because they're paying me to be there.
And you live really close.
Just 2 miles from my house. I could walk, but I'm going to drive.
All right, so we're going to go check out our time-shifted match here. We have a Sultai Reclamation strategy here in the time-shifted arena.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday we got to see a bit of the colorless Eldrazi deck, Lance 9s. We actually saw him mulligan to Oblivion twice, but here we got him on the backup feature. Hopefully his mulligans go a little bit better. Now, the talk of this round, for me, is this Sultai Reclamation deck from Joshua. Now, I'm a pretty big fan of the card Wilderness Reclamation, as you may or may not know. And I'm curious to see how good it is here in Modern. And specifically, you know, this build that Joshua has brought to the table. And if you want to check it out, you can check it out on the Cardboard Live extension and see what I'm talking about. He has 4 copies of Assassin's Trophy in the main deck to give him a little bit of removal. He's got 1 copy of Blue Sun Zenith as well as 1 Nexus of Fate. So if he generates enough mana, he can draw his whole deck and then take infinite turns. That's nice.
That is pretty powerful. It was a little bit of a miss on his early Wilderness Reclamation. We saw him cast a Growth Spiral here. Has 4 lands on the battlefield, but did not have the Reclamation just yet. Lance had a draw that's a little bit anemic. Eldrazi Mimic into Eternal Scourge. He's chunked in for a little bit of damage. See on this turn he bumps Joshua down to 11. A Snapcaster Mage traded with the Mimic earlier. Chalice of the Voids have been caught by Remand and now Cryptic Command. Can Joshua get a Reclamation online?
Yeah, I mean, then that's always the trick with the Reclamation decks. You have a lot of cards that are generally pretty good. But a lot of them are like cycle, kind of spin the wheels. And here we just need to find some way to generate that extra mana, whether it's Wilderness Reclamation or just hitting all your land drops. We saw Joshua miss a couple land drops already this game, and we'll see if he's able to draw out of it here. It looks like with a Remand on a Reality Smasher should be pretty decent from here.
Yeah, able to buy a little bit of time there. Yeah, that was the first major threat Lance had tried to deploy. Josh is able to tag that, sticking around at 10 so far. A Snapcaster Mage is in hand. He has that Cryptic Command in the graveyard still.
Now, one of the biggest innovations to Sultai Reclamation was, I don't want to take credit for it because I'm sure someone else also thought of this, but I thought Hieroglyphic Illumination would be insanely good with Wilderness Reclamation because it's a card you can cycle early on, like to act like one of those Serum Vision Thought Scour type cards that you see in a lot of these blue decks. But once you get the engine running and you get a lot of mana, just being able to spend 4 mana to hard cast it is more than welcome. And obviously, it was more of an innovation in those Azorius Miracles decks that have been cropping up lately, but something that I just thought would pair very nicely with Reclamation.
Lance had Eldrazi Mimic Matter Reshaper as his turn. Didn't want to deploy the Smasher, so Snapcaster Mage into Cryptic Command is going to catch the Reshaper. Snapcaster itself hangs around to maybe tango with the Mimic.
Another cool innovation from the Sultai Reclamation deck from Joshua's side of things. 2 copies of Tasker, the Golden Fang. The activated ability pairs nicely with Reclamation, a way to give you a lot of use out of the extra mana. Being able to activate the ability multiple times, but also 2 copies of Pulse of Murasa, which work nicely with Snapcaster Mage after you've chump blocked or traded with a creature.
All right, now Nines is going to try to make that Reality Smasher again. That would pump the Mimic up, but Snapcaster Mage Remand will catch that. Let's go back Josh's way. Now, this is the stage of the game where he's been able to tread water pretty significantly now. If he could get a Reclamation online, it'd be easy. And he still has just a really heavy hand of cards. So it's not that tough for him to keep interacting.
Yeah, now he's going to play a Tasker, the Golden Fang, and still has 6 mana at the ready. And a lot of cards in hand. Looks like 2 copies of Assassin's Trophy, Mystical Teachings, Hieroglyphic Illumination. The joke here, though, is that he does have only 5 life points to work with. But, you know, he has quite a few things to do with his mana, and we're going to see how he's able to take care of this.
He's going to get aggressive. Those 2 Snapcaster Mage will come across. Lance down to 16.
I mean, Lance has to be a little careful. If he taps out for something here and gets remanded or hit with a Cryptic Command, you know, there's a chance he just gets whooped by Nexus of Fate, you know.
Yeah, he's going to cast Thought Knots here. It's like there's going to be a response of Mystical Teachings from Joshua.
Yeah, and again, we see time and time again these powerful tutor cards with tutor packages in decks. And this Thought Knots are going to hit with a Remand. 6 mana for a Remand is not a great rate, but as long as it does what you want it to do and you have the mana to invest into it, it's more than fine.
Yeah, looked more than fine to me.
Yeah, now Josh is actually going to force Lance into a chump blocking situation. He's going to attack with everything. And if Lance doesn't block, a Nexus of Fate is going to put him in a bad spot. He's going to take 6 here, down to 10, and then Nexus is going to let him untap, attack for 6 again, and then still have use for all that extra mana.
And these decks do play the 1 Nexus. There's 2 copies of Mystical Teachings. Josh not really at the mana to just kind of chain that, but that is a theoretical endpoint for this deck, especially when you have Wilderness Reclamation online.
Right, and putting Lance down to 4 here with the attack, and with multiple copies of Assassin's Trophy in hand, Joshua is just winning the game the hard way. You can see the control and tempo sides of this deck really coming out, and in a lot of ways it starts to resemble that of Splinter Twin, but without the really disgusting gameplay aspects that make you never want to tap out, you know?
Right.
And there, Joshua seems like he took it down pretty easily. Another Reality Smasher just got hit with another counter spell, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, once you get to Cryptic Command mana, you have this deck that draws all these extra cards, generates so much excess mana. Just, you're able to keep leveraging that. It's just so powerful. If you get to a stage, if you had Reclamation Teachings, would make it so easy.
All right, so for sideboards here, the Colosseum Eldrazi side, Lance Nines has 1 copy of Pithing Needle, 3 Ratchet Bomb, 3 Relic of Progenitus, 4 Leyline of the Void, 3 Spatial Contortion, and 1 Warping Well. And if you want to take a look at this for yourself, make sure to check out that Cardboard Live extension. You can see the full deck list, including the sideboard, and you can try to figure out how you would sideboard. But for me, if I'm Lance Nines in this spot, you got to see those Snapcaster Mages are a pretty huge aspect of this Sultai Reclamation deck. With that said, you don't want to go overboard, so I think even though he has access to 4 Leyline of the Void and 3 Relic of Progenitus, I'm probably just bringing in Relic of Progenitus because it can cycle, and then getting the 4 Dismembers out of my deck, and maybe bring in something like a Warping Well or Pithing Needle to name something.
Yeah, makes sense. Joshua's side of things, 2 Torrential Gearhulk, 2 Abrupt Decay, 2 Crypt Incursion, a Cyclonic Rift, 2 Devour Flesh, 2 Fatal Push, 2 Life Goes On, and 2 Surgical Extraction. Couple answers to larger creatures in there, the Devour Fleshes.
I mean, you could give me like half an hour to figure this out, but honestly, I have no idea. This sideboard plan, Torrential Gearhulk having Flash means you can find it with Mystical Teachings, and doubling up on a lot of those really powerful instants like Cryptic Command is a huge deal. The body being a 5/6, eating a Reality Smasher is also a huge deal. So, I mean, I would probably bring in both of those because I feel like this is just going to be a long, grindy game, and it's just one of your best cards off the top of the deck. Now, with that said, Abrupt Decay can kill Chalice of the Void, but it doesn't really kill much else, so it's kind of a downer. And I'm not sure that I would want it in the deck, even though it is one answer to a Chalice of the Void on 2, which is reasonably problematic for stopping your Snapcaster Mages and stuff like that. Crypt Incursion can gain you some life. Devour Flesh can eat a thing, but it doesn't really deal with Matter Reshaper all that well. So, again, there's a lot of half answers that I'm just not sure about.
Lance starts on Leyline of the Void on the beginning of the game here. Just plays a Ghost Quarter and a Waste to start. Josh with a Breeding Pool and a Polluted Delta. Eldrazi Templars at turn 3, Thought-Knot Seer. We've seen Joshua remand a lot of spells so far in this match. He's fetching and shocking. It looks like he has certainly at least a Growth Spiral, but it was remand.
Yeah, and this Leyline of the Void is going to be the story of this game, and whether or not Joshua is able to fight through it, because the Snapcaster Mages do seem to be a pretty big part of his deck, as well as the Torrential Gearhulks. But he does, again, have 4 copy of Assassin Trophy in the main deck as an answer to it.
Yeah, 4 Assassin Trophies, 4 Cryptic Command. Bouncing Leyline against the colorless deck is as good as destroying it.
Right, and as long as he's able to contain those early threats, I think he should be okay.
Here's Thought-Knot Seer again from Lance. Joshua's going to fetch in response as well. Down to 16.
See if he has another remand for this Thought-Knot Seer.
Hasn't been light on them so far.
Yeah, and decides to go for a Growth Spiral. Doesn't want to get that one stripped and wants to make sure he can put another land onto the battlefield. And he's actually just dangerously close to hardcasting a Tasker, which is pretty funny. But, a handful of options here for Lance Nines. We got Torrential Gearhulk, a Tasker, a Nexus of Fate. It looks like a Wilderness Reclamation. So just a lot of options here to choose from. And honestly, if he takes one, a single draw off of Joshua's deck can completely change what the quote-unquote right answer is.
Yeah, definitely. Wilderness Reclamation was the take. That's what the deck's named after anyway. I liked the response of Growth Spiral to the Thought-Knots here from Joshua. I think Growth Spiral is probably the most important card in this deck.
Absolutely. Being able to hold up a ramp spell early on while also giving yourself remand protection is a huge deal. And there it is. That's a Cryptic Command off the top of the deck. And Joshua here, he's going to take a big swing probably, but then he's going to bounce that Leyline of the Void and unlock most of his deck, including that Torrential Gearhulk that Lance left behind.
Yeah, Thought-Knots here, bump Joshua to 11. Eternal Scourge is the follow-up. Counter, bounce your Leyline.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge deal.
Some kind of debate going on here.
It's always to figure out where the card goes that interacted with the Leyline of the Void.
Sure. Looks like we got it in the graveyard. Chalice of the Void on 2 is the follow-up.
Yeah, the card that does the thing to Leyline almost always goes to the graveyard as opposed to exile.
Joshua will fetch down to 10.
Yeah, but his hand is pretty stacked now. That Reclamation is gone, but he still has Torrential Gearhulk and Nexus of Fate, and those two cards can be really swingy once you hit the mana to cast them.
Very important that the Cryptic Command went to the graveyard too. Gives a juicy little thing for the Cryptic Command.
Right. Now, Lance actually has a pretty weird spot. He can attack with his Thought-Knots here and see if Joshua wants to effectively burn the Cryptic Command for no value and just playing the Torrential Gearhulk to eat the Thought-Knots here, but goes for the tempo play.
Yeah, Lance knew about the Gearhulk, no reason to attack, so Josh will fire that off. Just use a Cryptic Command to bounce the Thought-Knot Seer and draw for the Thought-Knot Seer leaving the battlefield. Attack with the Gearhulk, Lance to 15.
Yeah, and here Joshua could just like hardcast a Tasker and apply just an unreasonable amount of pressure for Lance's Colorless Eldrazi deck to deal with, but doesn't want to get that one copy of Nexus of Fate hit by the Thought-Knots here that he bounced, and very smartly just go ahead and cast it because it just kind of resets where you're at.
Yeah, get to do both.
Right.
Gearhulk bumps Lance down to 10. Growth Spiral is cast, and it's going to be exiled because Tasker is coming down.
Yeah, it was countered actually via Chalice of the Void. I think a slight misstep here from Joshua. He could have just hard cast the Tasker for the mana that was spent for that Growth Spiral, but nonetheless, still at a pretty big advantage here.
Thought-Knots here comes back down for Lance. Shows a second Tasker. Joshua not too upset about that. The other card in hand is a land, though.
Now with 9 power coming in, Lance is going to be all the way down to 1 if he doesn't chump block. And Tasker's ability can be activated 2 times.
And chump blocking with Thought-Knots here feels terrible.
I agree with that.
Go Joshua's way. Draws for turn. And he'll start by activating Tasker. Wilderness Reclamation land. You got to give him the spell.
Yeah, and that's just going to let him activate Tasker more and more times. And there's a chance that he just doesn't even attack because he doesn't want to get hammered by, Reality Smasher on the way back. But a Dismember here in response to the attack takes care of the Tasker. Now Josh is just left with a bunch of mana and a 5/6.
Yeah, takes care of Tasker before that Reclamation untap trigger, so no more activations on that. And it's in the graveyard. See what Lance can do, though. He's got a 4/4 versus a 5/6 as it stands. He's also at 6 off of that Dismember against Josh on 10. Some ground to make up. No action for Lance, just a land drop. Go back to Joshua.
We sure a mystical teaching, boys.
Ooh.
When you got 400 mana, that's not a bad one.
Yeah, with the Wilderness Reclamation?
Because it's effectively 2 copies of Nexus of Fate.
Yes, yeah. Mystical Teachings, cast it, go find your Nexus, cast that, flash back your Teachings, get it again.
Yeah, and with the Reclamation, you just get to float an insane amount of mana. I mean, worst comes to worst, you could actually just go get Blue Sun Zenith, right?
Yeah, got Cryptic Command, that's not bad either.
All right, we're going to float 1,000.
Flashback Teachings.
Flashback
and
Teachings.
Still 7 mana up, 8 mana up.
Cast Nexus of Fate, and then we're going to bounce Thought-Knots here and attack for the win, seems like. Seems like to me.
Just 2 Cryptic Commands. I don't hate that. There's 8 mana. I mean, how do you really lose with 2 Cryptic Commands?
I mean, that's also true.
Players have been trying to figure that out for years.
I mean, this does play around some wonky thing that kills Torrential Gearhulk, but you have to imagine that if Lance had an answer to Torrential Gearhulk, it would be dead.
Yeah, no kidding. So if you're in Void, Lance will scry. Still got that Leyline in hand, the Simian Spirit Guides as a second card, and some third.
Yeah, this game is all but over. Those two Cryptic Commands are going to basically solidify Joshua's advantage here and close us out in just a second.
Feels bad to cast Simian Spirit Guide, worse to not be able to. An attempt at Chelsea the Void on 4, that's no good. Joshua's going to take that one down. Game and match 2-0.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting look at that Sultai Reclamation deck, and with a 9-1 record, we may